Gilg Jew, Gilg J as Gilg Nerach.
As leis a cheol seo sé Claare na Gael Viscoiltoya Cartnish and seo Station and Ashun Radio Banning. Hello, I'm Robert Cadine Cornwall, or Robert a Corslach.
Have you ever had tell about Bobby Bob?
And you're very welcome to this edition of Claare na Gael, with a thread in the English language as leis nice a hilg, and with a thread in the Manx language, Chinny na Mera, the mother tongue of Alien Banning, the Isle of Man. As Bannachten dad Rish. Turning to the newspapers of 150 years ago, one of the great topics of the day was a piece of legislation called the Tynwald Court Procedure Bill. One clause was controversial in providing an offence of contempt or breach of privilege of any of the three branches of the legislature. Ta scielen ons tjaglam na brerich en grim en mesich sciel en ons tjaglam na brerich en grim en mesich a bilje almond. Ta dunje is ben gin pertjak is den ben na shadow voor bilje almond roosje tai is die buishel son janu gedjurges voel as ge bijna snjaagda. The 5th of March was Gool Peran, the feast of St. Piran, an Irish saint who is enthusiastically embraced as the patron saint of Cornwall under the white cross on a black field. Claare na Gael celebrates that gans illo a gurno, les kjol by an horn, with music from Cornwall. Towers geestjach rish Radio Banning Station na Ashun, viscol scaliamach by Dulish, Allen Vannin.
An malata hi sedri blug, I bluften ha leven lana. Of Cullican Tackerin, Culliac Tackerin, Walthaji, of Cullican Tackerin, of Culliac Tacka Ilbasti, Tralla la 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 la. Cullican Tackerith of Ian Tacker, Nins Hus Culliac Aral, Tacka Casson. Rugdusty, ribbon lock, all of the squalor. If a Cullican Tackerin, fully attacked the wealth of G, a Cullican Tackerin, fully attacked a Ilbasti, Tralla la 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 la. Cullican Tackerin for being Tacker, Nins Hus Culliac Aral, Tacker Casson. And with Alchis ma, Uscullia cara teca gazo. Uscullia cara teca gazo.
That's musician and singer from the St Austell area, Richard Trethewey, with the band The Rowan Tree, with a song in Cornish about eating an culliach horse, the mallard, and it was collected by the Reverend Sabine Baring Gould, but he considered the words too coarse, so we gave it only as a dance tune. One of the famous events in establishing an elected House of Keys was the wrongful imprisonment of 1864 of James Brown of the Isle of Man Times for what the members of the House of Keys had called his contempt of court. Well, it was certainly true that he held the self-elected House of Keys in contempt and campaigned for an elected body, and in this light he wrote disparagingly of the House of Keys and its members. For one of his articles he was called to the bar of the House, found guilty of contempt and breach of privilege, and imprisoned in Castle Rushen. Until later, of course, the charges were dismissed and the Keys had to pay damages to him for what had occurred. Actually, Robert Farger of the Mona's Herald might also have been imprisoned for similar articles in his newspaper, but he simply wasn't in good health and he couldn't really suffer being sent to Castle Rushen, so in fact he apologised. It didn't stop his campaign in his newspaper, though, and 2 years later came the legislation to make the Keys an elected chamber, with the first elections in 1867. Gaunst en ven buishel foon Vilje Almond, die gennacht an edrum se chriek, as die vagen ulju na kochleind en a blegen as duljugen gaust an a megen gol sha. Ons aag denjach, eist die chittewe ljag chriek, as die ginst en dunje sheshehek, bewissi gedden bes, daon lucky foon Vilje Almond. Ach geliers die en grijsjen, die gennacht an kriolwish. 5 jaren lug een nauwie, ruggerie lianu, dat voor de 4 gedjurges voel, is gebijna snjaagde. Ach, gemoer van bogehek, de rennie gedden bes. Rennen dunje sheshehek onlucky van Vilje Almond, as renne ko de trai. Hij en 3 sjaars henke de wei beggen de sloetrimschach, as luk de Gael siegen beggen de soldier, renne square by as hure ben Hesje Elia. Rugger a na ben Hesje nien day, as she mak wil janowe hid ben Hesje, as gedjurges voel as gebijna snjaagde. Richard Gendel wrote a song, Prias Arwen, the Bride of Inspiration, and he wrote of it, the allegorical girl becomes the bride of inspiration, the inspiration of Celtic culture refound today. The lion and the cock are England and France. Like a phoenix from the flames, the new language is being reborn, a new child, a new branch grafted on an old tree. Well, here, unusually, Gwenno, rather than singing one of her own songs, sings Richard Gendel's Prias Arwen.
You
Gwenno, with a song written in Cornish by Richard Gendel, originally for Brenda Wotton, but Brenda herself only ever recorded a practice tape of it. The household languages of Gwenno's family were Welsh and Cornish. Tre'r bu ren y ben hiesio gyn ninek, fi genach dan draw grai mwrec y son. Ach, tre'r bu ren y gyn ilia beg, henks munyn olgstiach sy chriec. Nach harach li cost na urged olio dunje shesha son a ninek, as nacht van gillions en red je shen. As moso henke de chor dui woerde, as yennache immene bain derre chorneel gus a chorneel elia, as cor badag day on shaw, na saus day on shen, drau a peetje bach de kinjach ons burre. Tre yenach chit de balia lug skol gerau shier bi a hon. Kiert de rau tre henke ben chesje stiach on schemer hoes, dair en nien bij gorius doorte, womik, korda oel? Kaart de loer me feitje door de woer, as huggigi oel brau as a gistje, as a gistje wa fagrel moer trom, les glasleidje as jaren. Womik door de nien weg, nog bifair ik me brein, yes. In 1876, the Tynwald Court Procedure Bill included a clause to make it illegal to gainsay or criticise the legislature. However, as they also used to hold meetings in private behind closed doors, these weren't what people might have called open and transparent proceedings anyway. This came back to the Keys in early March of 1876, and the editorial in the Isle of Man Times responded to it. Public opinion in the Isle of Man has not a feather's weight with those who should be peculiarly susceptible to its influence. This disastrous and discreditable state of things was proved to demonstration on Tuesday last. Never in any civilized country having even the semblance of free government was a more unanimous verdict pronounced against a proposed legislative measure than the fiat issued by the public of this island, denouncing the attempt made by the legislature to acquire exceptional powers to punish political adversaries under the clause of what is known to the public as the Gagging Bill. Cornish dance music played by the musicians of the first group of Cornish dancers who visited the island for the Cruineach, and that was Cam Cernuech, and they were led by the accordion there of Ray Delph.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Siún an asiún de radio vanning is an seo sé Claare na Gael was scolar scéile maach. Mish Robert Gutting Carswell Robert a Carslach.
Did the other hear tell of old Bobby Bob?
Rish Shachten looked at Claare na Gael guller scéile maach te kei dat golgus in a degger radio vanning as brewer kraman eish rish as master na Claare nun shen te Claare na Gael reclen. Te podcast regatten nasty Jane Clairnius, trud in a degger radio vanning, na trud kerder and podcastelia, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, na Alexa. The Isle of Man Times editorial continues. Every constitutional form of opposition to the measure has been diligently employed. From press and platform has issued one general chorus of condemnation. Not a solitary individual in the slightest prominence or weight outside of the House of Keys has been known to speak in favour of the obnoxious bill, framed and made with a view of limiting those rights of free speech and written criticism which form the most precious heritage of Englishmen. I wonder why they made that Englishman. Anyway, back to the editorial. This country told its rulers in the most plain and unmistakable manner that it didn't want the legislation proposed in the Timble Court Procedure Bill, that there was no cause shown for its introduction, and that the attempt made to gag the press and fetter free discussion was an insolent and wanton aggression upon public liberty. Shen marban boer jerkelrish is doorty. Be trenne a chit the valley vain skull. As tre honiki by an unyug the rawi chit, henk I ulkus ne hinchirek. As any glacka nool as rawi a vain ninek as doorty. Gebie heads rosh me bis egg the vre. Esh gawi a nool stjachs a gistje, as renni doona fargel. Esh henke gilja begs jaag eg a dorris as doorty rishes, she en kinchels a gereek. Me wak, bevalja doel? Me boer door de gilja, kree ho aglach tau gien. Ach, bevaljam, maar so korda oel. Esh doorty go kinchel as renny rai, as gouds wie kummelsoes vargele gistja, tar de so, as gauw mag ver de han heen. Het gouds van gilje krome herrische gistje foslich, crash noes sleshen argel, de ren a kjonege etlach jay maastene oelen rai. Esh, denie wen atjem fi voer, as we gindes een acht oddach I kosha a noil. Cornwall was known from antiquity as a source of tin, and that's to be seen in the white vein making a cross boiling out of the black granite. In the flag of St. Piran he lit a fire on a stone, and out of that came the white vein, giving the white cross on the black field. Well, here the Stows sing about tin and copper boys.
Come on, you jolly tender lads, and listen unto me. I'll tell you of a story that shall make ye for to see, concerning Bunny Party and the scams that he have made to stop our tin and copper mines and all our pilcher trade. Hurrah for tin and copper boys and fisheries likewise. Hurrah for Cornish maidens and bless their hardy eyes. Hurrah for all the gentry and may they never fail. Hurrah, hurrah for Cornwall, hurrah boys one and all. He summoned 40,000 men to Poland they did go, and for to rob and plunder very, very well do know. But 10,000 men were killed, lay dead in blood and gore, and 30,000 ran away, I can't tell thee where I'm sure. Hurrah for tin and copper boys and fisheries likewise. Hurrah for Cornish maidens and bless their hardy eyes. Hurrah for all the gentry and may they never fail. Hurrah, hurrah for Cornwall, hurrah boys one and all. he had 40,000 still to make into an army for to work his wicked will and try for to invade us if he'd and quickly fly. And 40,000 Cornish lads don't know the reason why. Hurrah for tin and copper boys and fisheries likewise. Hurrah for Cornish maidens and bless their hairy eyes. Hurrah for all the gentry, a maiden never fail. Hurrah, hurrah for Cornwall, hurrah boys one and all. Hurrah for tin and copper boys and fisheries likewise. Hurrah for Cornish maidens and bless their hairy eyes. Hurrah for all the gentry, a maiden never fail. Hurrah, hurrah for Cornwall, hurrah boys one and all.
The Stows, tin and copper boys, hurrah, hurrah for Cornwall, hurrah for one and all. Onnen hag all is the Cornish motto, one and all. Haia ben gus coir chistjegach sa chamber liabach eg, as gawi buddel loud ben mach as a chistjeg benyedagi. As lurgi corcion fregertacht den wannel, renni kiona at lesja buddel lau, na bech beg ragen. As huggia na hai stol roshen doris leshen ool sa lauega. Eish henkstjach marged weg sa chamber early gus a boirek, van a shadow roshen isle as ish mesta potus che. Vumig, dort marged, tam a vre na shadow roshe doris as de ool sa lauega, as te gian fi ven. Vrai mi je de chordau an ool, a gerennik of fregerdau. Te gin de weg fi weg. Imi rieste door de woor. As man a ginne cordot fregert, cor saus de erg lies. Maar so hai marge de ries as doorte, ma vre, cordau an oel. Ach an on a renne cor Gael bigi, huggi saus de erg lies. As ren na chion tujum jay, sen vi aglet jas the jaru. Well, the Isle of Man Times editorial is not holding back, describing this proposed legislation as being to gag the press and fetter free discussion, and saying that it's an insolent and wanton aggression upon public liberty. It goes on, yet the bill which has been so universally denounced, which so stunk in the nostrils of the public, has actually passed the House of Keys. It's true that one of the offensive clauses has been slightly modified, but substantially the Keys have carried out what was the secret wish of their hearts, though with their lips they disavowed it when confronted by their enraged constituents. This is the latest phase of the injurious operation of Home Rule in the Isle of Man as at present administered, and we call upon the Home Secretary and the British Parliament to note the abject helplessness of the Manx public to successfully resist any measure upon which power in this island has set its heart. Well, this is another of Richard Kendall's songs, beautifully performed this time by Brenda Wooten, and it's Silver Net.
Oh, would there were the sea from Rame to Marsland, and Tamar were as wide could be, and Cornwall were some island in the ocean, a refuge in this ever-changing sea. If I had got the strength to lead an army, or the wit to argue well and win the day, I would place a silver net about my country, and let her children take their own again. Oh, could you see the future of our country as plainly as the glass reveals it me? And could you see the crowdy crown lay empty? Well, might you weep for things that used to be, for the voices by the harbour of an evening, and the cry that calls the cattle from the hill. They seem to have an unfamiliar ringing that strikes into my heart an icy chill. These lanes are feet have cut across the ages. These quilted fields we've stitched since came the farm. These houses and these harbours and these churches, these stones on stones, the country's face that charm. No longer are there Cornish feet to tread them, nor Cornish hands to tend and trim and clean. They've sold a motherland that bore and bred them, and wandered far away from Cornwall's green. Oh, would there were the sea from Rame to Marsland, and Tamar were as wide could be, and Cornwall were some island in the ocean, a refuge in this ever-changing sea. If I had got the strength to lead an army, or the wit to argue well and win the day, I would place a silver net about my country, and let her children take their own again.
Brenda Wootton, for so many years, the voice of Cornwall, and especially with her collaboration with Richard Gendel. And there we heard Richard Gendel's songs, in English this time though, the one called Silver Net. We call upon the law officers of Her Majesty, declaims the Isle of Man Times, to see whether there is any constitutional ground for adding a new crime to the criminal code of the Isle of Man, a crime unknown to English law, and which has been invented simply by 24 men not faithfully representing, but defiantly misrepresenting the public, whose interests they vowed as gentlemen of honour to protect. If this appeal, which we solemnly make on behalf of the public of this island, pass unheeded, then we are the only subjects of Her Majesty who are practically outside the pale of imperial justice. It is due, however, both to the Keys and the public that we should calmly examine the amendment which has been introduced into the 6th clause of this now notorious gagging bill. The clause originally made it a criminal offence for a person to speak or write anything tending to bring the Timbled Court, the Council and Keys, or any member thereof, into hatred or contempt. Gau má géad toach der Kenia as skreche, as renny raigus a voirek, as dorti, wumik tabi bula jay, kjaun me vrera, as we Kenia skreche, as her jinnach is square by, waar géad dort a voirek, kreit her we jinted. Ach tanny kjoen, nach jinnach peger we fagen de belbega ger. Genel njat ein nish, niemit corre mach as a red de soutje. Tre henken de valia as high as she's, ege woord door te kreten maken. Ach, van boer Lina just moer ledden de vrot toe, as we ma geet Kenia de gier, no na doddy square by. Esch door ten erish, kreten maken. Door de boer, teengel maak a cheer gus taie jan neem, de hannachten onschenlich tammelt. Cren fe ynach gol dwrt yn as gyn cwrs ledden yes? O, hwish fe giri gol, as vrije jim de ligge de tanachton en shen, reshe shachtien. Be kereel mai gin che. Well, having heard Cam Cernuach earlier on, leading research into Cornish dance and music and playing and dancing with them, was Merv Davey, in fact, founder of Cam Cernuach. And there he was again in the company of his brothers Kit, Andy and Neil, who made up the band Booker.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Siodad Stasiwn yn Asiwn, Radio Fanning. Cartnish e Claare na Gael, was verklaas en Merenpien, Robert Getting Carlo, Robert de Karslach.
Haven't heard tell of old Bobby Bob.
Och, nee, door ten tam bi trimschacht de loer me gewoon shen. Gerouwig kaart hon de golg en kors ledden emmes. Les shen gauwig toig as door te. Waar geet kren vet au Kenia? heg de vreer bakrish tre anjach. Lord tamelt dorte, wel me ben jesje ten beefy vai, cordau tulju. As na smooth dia, na smooth e giri, der be a nia olju, as chawin na krauen foen boer. Eis hai marged gus a woord gistjeeg a hek, as gaui ferje na buddel en lau sherek bain gistjeeg sinchla, as renni trogel nis na krauen vai foen boer, as renni kjorn lads a buddel lauek, as hai maag as a doris, as ish code a try. Huggy had een lice en neer glas van Wilje Almond, as chilirach henke kriede wij edrumrish, as gerenni kenje na soja. Eis rauwe Wilje Almond toiach der leeste huggers vai, as jarn de bangan en kujach, as eis hired by Michaelia, kaat gurish bulle baas de boga. Having set out the basis of this clause, the Isle of Man Times complains. It was perfectly immaterial whether the matter spoken of or written was true or false. If its tendency was to produce contempt in the public mind for individual legislators, the offence was complete. The alteration now made is that, to constitute an offence, a person must maliciously and falsely slander and defame these sacred legislative Solons. Solon was the great Athenian political thinker from the 600s into the 500s BC. The source from whence this liberal amendment has been derived appears to be an old statute, which for practical purposes is obsolete, but which, being unrepealed, is still the law of the land. The Act to which we refer is dated 1647, and our English readers will be not a little amused to find that our local House of Keys has been taught a lesson in liberality even from the enactments passed in an age when newspapers were unknown, when pamphleteers who wrote against prelacy had their noses slit. And the bucker was an entity for whom Newlyn fishermen left fish on the shore. Later, miners left the end crust of their pasties, a digeon for the bucker. A bucker is also the name given to someone from Newquay. Now this quartet is called Bucker's Four, with Kenneth Pelmere's setting of Pierce Gilbert's poem Hail to the Homeland, but here it's in Richard Jenkins' Cornish translation.
Can
Well, that's Kenneth Pelmere's 1982 setting of a poem originally written by Piers Gilbert in 1958, and it was translated into Cornish by Richard Jenkin in 1982. Hail Dagan Mambro by Buckus 4. And with Buckus 4, I suspect that means they're probably members of the New Key Male Voice Choir as well. Now, the date of the legislation, says this editorial, was when the tyranny of the Star Chamber was rampant, and when to dare to question the acts of arbitrary power was almost equivalent in its results to the committal of a capital crime! ! This old statute decreed that any person who spoke scandalous speeches about the chief officers of the island, or of any of the 24 keys, with respect to their offices and places, and was not able to prove it, should be fined £10 and have his ears cut off besides. The keys, it says, blushed when they found out they were actually asked to agree to a measure that was infinitely more illiberal than one that had been passed in the reign of Charles I, and to cover their ignominious retreat, they readily snatched at the amendment which made it necessary that falsehood should be a material ingredient in the slander or defamation to which the keys might be subjected. Well, this article then goes on to point out that G.W. Dumble, George William Dumble, as an MHK, had said far worse things just recently in a speech about fellow members than the newspapers ever did. Esh jiri bodjil vain vilja, as ons mene bodjil va laste aisle, as mag as an aisle jiri ushag eilen, as ish goyle ren fi villish, renny goolian soes an air, as tref weer netlach soel, van bilje almond fos on mor weer o shen, ach van buddel lauw ledden de grauwen, soel. Van maar geed gennacht an manre de loer, as edrum se griek, kaart mor de bege brerek, fos bio. Maar so hij bak de bogoil se tai, as gawie a generic. Henken ushag lugji etlach soel, de vein sai Claare tai gauw, net sjo tai gauw as gawie toiach der goile ren. Shema voir en mishevaru, shema jeemish de jaru, shema huur remne grauwen a gedden, wat courage ek ons buddel lauw, as courage nen lime gedden, foon vilje almond brauw. Kai wit, ma renish, chosele an ushag tamish. Van gauw na haise chapegge, as jinu driach trechile an ushag, van a sai a chleege as goyle ren. Now the name Karakana means a love of singing, although actually they're a Noslauen band playing for that new style of Cornish Ceilidh, which is very like a fest nós, or a lot more improvisation going on than perhaps in fest nós dancing. Well, here Karakana have fun with a piece they call Cornwall Chant.
Sweet sighing, cliff edge winter crying, still warm in heart am I to be here. Oh land, this land I do love thee. Love goes with me as I leave her, when restlessly I cross that river, but slowly seeps the cold of missing into my my bones until they start to ache. Scruffy and untidy yet, beauty rough at the edges, that stamp of man in song of nature, like nowhere else will call me home. On the hill and in the valley, where'er my errant feet do take me, there Cornwall's heart beats through the rubble of mines and clay where men did work their lives. Sharp and strong, no sweet sighing, cliff edge winds are crying, still warm in heart am I to be here. Oh land, this land I do love thee. Love goes with me as I leave her, when restlessly I cross that river, but slowly seeps the cold of missing into my bones until they start to ache. Scruffy and untidy yet, beauty rough at the edges, that stamp of man in song of nature, like nowhere else will call me home.
The band Caracana and Cornwall chant. As I say, they play for the Noslowen, but they enjoy singing as well. In fact, they love singing, hence the name Caracana. Ren a gawer moester de golders de yen an ushig. As goudswiggle herish sola dorishega, chaile vergin a karen and taiega. As wij ons mijn de strijge les karen an derachas, as weg ach osje a chas elje. As we cow an arpenegge, as van triacht se derrelau, as van a pinjauren se lau elje. As merso een jadu voor seisje grenie, as gien soes an ushig. Now the Isle of Man Times editorial concludes with these words. Our criticisms shall not be one whit less scathing than ever when public abuses and the follies of public men have to be held up for reprobation. And if liberty is doomed to perish under the pressure of the official paw, the press, so far as we are concerned, shall be the last citadel where Manx serfs may find a refuge. Well, they certainly had a fine turn of phrase in the press of 150 years ago. Wel, tan treir jet de chorcion Claare Gael chir cho. Between 7 and 9, Chris Pearson presents the best in chill-out music for your Sunday evening, and then at 9, Judith Lay will be here to ease you into Monday morning. Claare Gael closes with a mélange of music from Cornwall with Camborne Town Band, and in fact we'll hear the bells of Camborne Parish Church of St Martin and St Mary Addock in a piece called Mystic Trevithick in honour of the Cornish engineer Richard Trevithick, who devised the first steam engine moving under its own power. Ach nishane the jaru. As so until the next time, this is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert the Carslach.
Oh, Bobby Bob.
Wishing you a very good night, Eve I'm a Horts, as Duts my Yerian share.